Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's been 15 minutes, and so just in the interest of time, I'm going to invite our panel forward. If Dr. McCabe, Dr. Walker, and Dr. Chisholm could join us at the front of the room, that would be very helpful. And so just as they are making their way to the front of the room, we will ask you to begin wrapping up your conversations. So essentially what we seek to do in this process is, one, get some reflections from our other two guests in terms of the issue of the integrated health practices, any opening comments, and then we'll turn to the floor in terms of your reflections or any questions you would have to our presenter or our panel. So perhaps Dr. Walker or Dr. Chisholm, if there's any initial comment you have about integrated practices, please weigh in. Yeah, go ahead. Stand. It's a portable handheld mic. So.
Hello. Good morning. Integrated health, I think, is kind of used as kind of a catchphrase these days as far as what we're trying to do in medicine. It's the new phase of medicine. So I would, my comments on it is I believe integrated health kind of goes along the whole spectrum. What we're talking about integrated health is not just connecting behavioral health to primary care. It's kind of connecting the whole healthcare system as a whole. So I think if you think about it on that level, it makes a lot more sense, because not only are we trying to have our healthcare be involved with the folks as far as physical and mental health, but we're also trying to get all the different organizations within the healthcare system to work with us. So it's a lot easier said than done doing that. And we're really battling that right now in Cherokee as far as how we're trying to get that to really work effectively. And so it's been a battle, but we're constantly trying to find ways to improve that communication, because it really comes down to communication. And we want folks that are from different different areas of the healthcare system to realize that they have support from others. So it's really important that when you're doing an integrated model, that you communicate. That's the number one thing you want to do, is you want to communicate through the various parts of your organization. And by doing that, I think you're really offering the patient the most care that they can get. For instance, if someone comes into our facility in the primary care clinic, they have access to not only their primary care provider, but they have access to nutrition, they have access to any sort of behavioral health therapy that they might need during that time, any sort of counseling. So it kind of opens up avenues for folks to get a lot of wraparound care in one visit, which is very important, because as you know, people's time coming in, they're not just going to come in and do multiple appointments at different times. They want to come in and they want to get as much as they can during that visit. And we want them to get that, so it helps us out quite a bit as well.
Well, first off, I want to thank Melvina for a wonderful presentation, and congratulations on the work that you're doing. I reflect on integrated care in a variety of ways. And the first thing I want to say is that all of you who are trained in healthcare, from counselors to social workers to nurses and psychologists, psychiatrists, other physicians, administrators, when you went to school and learned how to do what you do, you could close your eyes and have a fantasy about, I'm going to help people. And usually, I'm going to help people meant you were going to have a room or a little conference area where they would come in and see you. And that's when the action happened. That's all wrong. You need to get out in the field. You need to be where your people are. You need to think about what's going on in the school. Let's talk to the teachers. Wouldn't you think that the teachers would like to have your healthcare support as they're trying to create change in the children? Wouldn't it be useful if the tribal council had your advice and your feedback about what's going on in the community in the work that you do That is, chronic illness is the single most important area of failure in healthcare in this country. It really is a problem. We know how to take care of acute care illness. We can stop those kinds of infections, trauma, difficulties of health, even cardiovascular things by and large. There's some chronic illnesses across all of medicine that we don't do well with, and they live in mental health. And we know that it takes time. Your teachers, your leaders in communities all need to know what you know about that issue. And so I think that we need to change our training and we need to change our thinking in integrated care so that we're not just talking to other healthcare people. We're talking to elders, we're talking to medicine people. I can tell you, when I go out to tribal communities, I make that as a request. I'm routinely doing consultation across Indian country, and the first thing I want to do is I want to talk to the power and I want to talk to the council and say, what do you want me to do? Because usually I come in and they ask me to take care of something that's big and ugly. It could be suicide, it could be domestic violence, it could be, and the expectation is I'm going to stop that. Well, do you think I can stop it? No. They can stop it. I can help them stop it, but I can't stop it by myself. And so I want to hear what they're asking me to do, and then I want to talk with them about how we might be able to do it together and how I can help, not as the solution person. I'm the helper. That's a consultation. Now, after that, I say I want to talk to the recreation therapists because they know all the kids. I want to talk to the elders, and I want to talk to medicine people about their theory of why this is happening. That's what Dr. McCabe was talking about in opening up our eyes to what's around us as healthcare providers. All of you in the room need to do that. That's integrated care, and I think that that's what's opening up in Eastern Band Cherokee. Is they have the incredible opportunity to make a difference now, and they're building new buildings, and the tribal council is actually bringing support into the healthcare system. Very unusual that that happens, and they're on their way to making a difference, and they couldn't do it without the integration of efforts. Dr. McCabe, do you want to make a comment?
All right, we open the floor then for any questions or comments or questions to the panel members, or Q&A from the original presentation, or some reflections in terms of the topic or the conversation questions which were placed on your table. Cindy, thank you. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Cindy's right on top of the microphones. Every time I go to look at it over here on the table, she's already got it in the crowd. And let's introduce ourselves again.
Jennifer E. Cuffy Wilson, Shinnecock Montauk, and I'm from Blossom Sustainable Development. Oh my gosh, I was sitting here listening to you and I wanted to jump out of my seat because of everything that you said was so powerful, very, very powerful. And I remember my elder was sitting over here and she was talking about how we have to teach our children who they are, where they come from. And that is so true because our young people now, they really don't know. And like I tell my young people on my nation, I remember I went to one of our smoke shops and the young man that had waited on me, he had this look on his face, you know, he never smiled. And I would look at him and I would say, why aren't you smiling? He said, I don't feel like it. And I just looked at him, I said, do you know who you are? Do you know where you come from? I said, do you realize that we are indigenous people to this land that we are standing on? We have been here. According to the white man, We've been here for over 13,000 years. That's what they tell us. We already knew it. We knew we've been here since day one, but they're telling us that we've been, so we're royalty. Not royalty when it comes to the king and queen. No, I'm talking royalty when it comes to the Creator put us here. And we are the stewards of this land, the stewards of the water. Okay? So instead of you standing there looking all gloomy, understand where you come from. You have so much to be proud of. So you can smile and look good because that's who you are. And when I'm sitting here listening to you, I have never been more proud to be an indigenous woman. I come from royalty. Okay? And you made me feel so proud of that. And you were so, I mean, I couldn't stop writing down what you were saying, but when you were talking about how we have to learn the white man's way and learn it better. Oh, my gosh. That's powerful, okay? Because what they've learned from us, they didn't just learn it, they took it. And then they changed it to better them. Not to better everyone, but just to better them. The greed. It was all about money, you know? So when you said that, it was like, whoa, yes, we have to be better. And we have to teach our children that you have to learn this. That's not going to make you worse. It's going to make you better, especially when you learn it better than them. But you learn it from your heart. I mean, these 7 teachings. Whew. Oh, my gosh. I mean, we are from the Creator. Who can really say that? We can, because that's who we are. So thank you so much for what you said, and I'm so looking forward to taking this back. And oh, one more thing. Whew. When you said that we have to learn better, Ayanna Smith-Williams and Gerard Smith, who are the director and assistant director to Blossom Sustainable Development, that's what they do. They do it better. And they're teaching me to do it better. And I just wanted you to know that. Thank you. Tabutne.
Thank you very much for that comment.
Yeah, for those comments. I just want to make a comment about one thing that you said about our young people. I've done a lot of mentoring for Native students in medicine, in nursing, a lot. I do in person, I do on emails, I do on calls, and one of the things that is common to all of them, to every single one person, Native person that I have mentored is, how do I get back to my ways? They want it. Our young people want it. And we have to provide it to them. We have to keep that in mind and develop very specific ways of teaching them. If we just keep that in the back of our minds, and if you look at some of the studies that I presented, that's exactly what it was. The outcomes to the clients were, I learned my Indianness. I learned my culture. That's what we really, truly, truly need to get back to. And tribal nations, tribal organizations, tribal communities have a responsibility for that. We need to take this. A quote that I had that I did not show, and this is my quote, is, how do we not become what we are trying to change? And we see that. Believe me, I struggled with it when I went through the boarding school and the training in Western medicine, because medicine is its own culture, language, behaviors, attitudes. It has all of that. So they're their own culture. And I had that struggle because it can be so insidious. You can easily just start moving from who you are, who you know you are, to this other way. So you have to have a conscious effort at preventing that from happening. And it's happened to me where I can see, wait, I'm going this way. I need to get back again. I need to get back again. And one of the ways for me is my prayers every single morning. That's what I was taught. Pray every single morning, at least that. It doesn't say you don't have to pray the rest of the time, but every single morning for sure. And that's where, again, I start grounding myself. But we really have to take that. Our youth want it. Our youth need it. That's where tribal nations need to take that and run with it and develop it.
In the back here?
Hi, Stephen Adams with Connect Tribe in Alaska. You mentioned prayer, and she mentioned the Creator. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Should I start from the beginning? So Stephen Adams with Connect Tribe up in Alaska. You mentioned prayer, and she mentioned the Creator. And I'm looking at question 4, thinking, what would be the ideal barrier-free healthcare system? I can't help but keep going back to integrating spirituality into health practices. You know, it's not foreign that the Alaska Native American population are a very spiritual people. You know, it's important to us. Our connection to the land, our connection to one another, our connection to the Creator. You know, it's all connected. And when I think specifically to Alaska history, we had Russian boarding schools. They actually impacted my grandparents. It's the reason why I didn't learn my language growing up. So those boarding schools created two things in these Native people: acculturation, which then led to shame of their own culture. Right? They assimilated to Russian culture. The other thing was it created pain, which then led to hatred. You know, but both those things create disconnect. And I know that's been a huge issue with our people. And so my question for you is, have you seen a successful integration of spirituality in health practices?
Who is that directed to?
Anyone.
And in fact, it might also be to the audience, if anyone's seen that.
I have a forced choice response. It is interesting if you think about how healthcare and how medicine came to be in Indian country. I think there are models, and I think there are some physicians, actually, Western-trained physicians, who are trying their best to take those steps. In Alaska, I guess I should mention that. I would talk about the regional area in Bethel and the villages there, and something up in Alaska that you all know best is the behavioral health aides. I think that the orientation and the way that the training is going for the behavioral health aides in Alaska, it's unique and community-based. And the spirituality and the intimacy that you're bringing forward, I think, is something that the rest of the Indian Health Service needs to take on. And I know that they're talking about behavioral health aides across Indian country. It would be one way to bring that spirituality and message back. But those of us who understand that process need to make sure that it happens. I honestly can't tell you, I think of the Navajo Nation Medical School for the medicine people in Navajo as a place that has been talked about a great deal. And I think Dr. McCabe can speak to that issue well. But we have learned a lot from the medicine people of various tribes, and the issue is how do we keep that alive? One little criticism I want to make about the federal government: they get turned on to fads. Everything's political in this country, and they say, oh, suicide's a problem. Let's throw a few $1 million at it, and then we're going to give it out to Indian country per capita. And so, basically you get a few dollars per person to deal with suicide. And so the focus and how we understand the problem isn't dealt with well. And I think that I want to challenge this group. If you believe that spirituality and the integration of health, as you heard from Dr. McCabe today, if you think that's an important issue in your group, I want to encourage you to add it. I want to encourage you to add it, and then I want you to teach us about it and how you did with it. We will not raise the steps on the ladder until you give us information about what works. So that would be my challenge to you all. If you want to do this, and I hope you do, let us know how it works. That's a failure in the administration of healthcare dollars in this country. And, the government has a responsibility to many people, many tribal communities, to provide healthcare and education. Tell them what you want. Don't sit there and wait for the Congress to tell you. The GIP reforms, do you know why they exist? Congress didn't feel that the money was being well spent, so they told the organizations to find a way to evaluate what you do. Wouldn't it be better if you all could tell the government whether it's working or not, so that you know that the GIP reforms won't tell it the way you could tell it? But I'm not anti-GIPRA from point of view of the need to get these resources, but I am anti-GIPRA about how it's done and the process. So we need to kind of work with that in a special way. I'm going to turn it over to the real answer.
No, you did great.
Good introduction.
So my question is, are you speaking about large scale or are you talking individual?
Could you elaborate on that? What do you mean?
So you asked, are there any true integration initiatives, programs? Is that correct? Was that your question?
Yeah.
Yes. Or were you talking large scale, like big organizations, or are you talking about individuals themselves integrating?
It would probably have to start on an individual level, right? Because the way that I connect with spirituality is going to be very different from how she connects or someone else connects. So I'm probably thinking individual then.
Okay. I'm happy to answer both, but your question is individual. I'll go with that one.
Thank you.
So one of the teachings that I had, again, going back to Navajo, is if we're talking individual, we were always taught to respect other ways, respect other religions. I may believe the Navajo way. I may believe the teachings that I was taught, but that doesn't mean everybody else does. And you need to respect that. You need to respect Christianity. You need to respect Catholicism. You need to respect Judaism. You need to respect the Muslim way of believing. It's that respect, and the elder, the Anishinaabe elder, spoke about that. I think it's when we start realizing these things and really within our heart changing and within ourselves changing what we believe, getting rid of that colonialism that we were taught. getting rid of that, and knowing that we don't have to be that. We don't have to be what they're telling us to be. We be who we were taught. We be who we are. We practice our values. We practice our beliefs. If we really, really make that concerted effort, I'm telling you, things will change. Things will change in your outlook. Things will change in your behavior. You will become more respectful. Western society isn't necessarily respectful, is it? Not necessarily. I'm not talking individuals now. I'm talking sort of as a group. It's not necessarily respectful. Look what's going on in our country now. But if we take that in ourselves and really, really believe what we were taught, it's going to come out. It's going to come out without any effort. It's going to be there. And that's what we need to teach our youth. On a larger scale, I was just thinking about this, is South Central Foundation as a wonderful, wonderful program on how they've integrated. Very effective. Because of the integration strategies, they have seen their ER visits drop by 30%. And they have a deeply integrated cultural program with elders in that. They have the traditional foods. They have the local art hanging in the hospitals. They have native physicians coming in and playing in the hospitals. Those are just very small examples. But they also address the attitudes of the providers. That's the other thing I had that I didn't get to talk about, is the attitudes. Our attitudes really make a difference. And again, I think that speaks to the individual. What are our attitudes? It also speaks to the larger scale. And one of the things that in New Mexico that I did, I was on the Tribal Advisory Council for the Honoring Native Life Initiative. It's a suicide prevention program. And we got money from the state, and we continue to get money from the state because our interventions are based from our native ways. And it's not just one tribe or multiple tribes. One of the things that we did, and one of the things that I kept hearing over and over and over again from my work was tribal leaders, when I would talk to them, they would say to me, well, I don't understand diabetes, so how am I supposed to lead my people on this? I don't know what that's all about. Same way with suicides. What we heard was, we don't talk about suicides in our communities. We don't talk about that. So our Honoring Native Life Initiative said, well, you know what? Let's do a little education here. Let's talk about suicide and what it is and what it's about and how that happens and why it comes about. So we put on this big conference, brought in all the grantees from the different tribes to the conference. One evening we set aside for tribal leaders. We brought them to the evening session. And we had there's 22 tribes, 24 tribes now, but back then 22, in New Mexico. And we had 12 of those represented at that conference. We had presidents there. We had the president of our Navajo Nation. We had the governors there, and that's who we were targeting. So we invited them. They were there. What we did is we did a Suicide 101. Did a presentation on that, so they would learn what that was all about. The second step, and probably the most powerful and more powerful, we brought in the students from their communities. And it was a group, it wasn't just one. It was a group of students who came in from the communities, and they spoke to the tribal leaders and said, we need you to hear us. We need you to listen to what's going on with us. And they address culture. My culture says, I don't talk about this, but I need to talk about this. We as young people need to talk about this. And multiple issues were brought up by the youth. I mean, you talk about youth who teach us, or people who teach us, it's our youth. We need to go back to listening to them. And so from that, the tribal leaders said, we heard you. We heard what you said. And we're going to look at this. We're going to change this. So education to me is absolutely, absolutely critical. And one more thing I wanted to add, which again focuses our way of looking at things. In the Navajo way, we believe that the young ones, the babies, the infants, they're still connected to the spirit world. So we have to honor them. Think about that if you're taking care of your responsibility to raise this little one. This one is still connected to the spirit world. There's a certain time when it moves on, but from the birth until that time, you're still connected. Think about how your attitude would change towards that little one. If we continued to teach those ways of our people, would we have abuse of the little ones? My answer is most likely not. Because you look at what happened in Alaska, in the Inuit community, and how they raised their little ones, and how they disciplined their little ones. There was no yelling. There was no hitting. They taught their little ones by speaking to them and by example, almost like on the same level. And again, it's that respect given to these little ones. That's where that's coming from.
Great. We have a final question over here.
Good morning. I want to greet you all a good morning and ask my elders to excuse me and the veterans that we have here. And I really enjoy this topic because that's what I'm about. I come from, I was an alcoholic, a drug user, and I brought that into my home and I brought that into my family. And so this gentleman was talking over here, he was talking about spirituality. And that is on an individual basis because that's how I came out of it. I came out of my drug use, I came out of alcoholism, violence in the family, domestic abuse, just about anything that you could name as a product of what we're all here for. And somehow I'm sitting in this room with all you individuals that want to help the people. And but I really get this because I had grandfathers and grandmothers, and I watched them when I was younger, and they were medicine people, and I watched how they integrated, like how you're talking about, and I can understand getting connected back to Grandmother Earth, and then getting connected back to Creator, and then getting connected back to the universe, and then doing that on an individual basis. Our people understand that because it's in our DNA. We're that way, and that's what this younger generation is seeking, is that connection back to our past. We have to go back to our past in order to move forward, because along that line we lost that. We all know about the intergenerational trauma when we got moved into the reservations and how that affected the man. And when that happened, the man, he couldn't provide for the family. He couldn't teach his son how to go out and hunt. He couldn't teach his son to go and fast. He couldn't teach his son to go and to be one with nature and to respect the earth, and then to take from the earth and to give back to the earth. And so in there, we lost that. And then at that time, that's when alcohol was introduced to us, Native Americans. When we got put in the reservations, POW camps, if you want to call it. Really want to get political. And then at that time, the father, he couldn't provide for his family. And so he had the mother alongside him. And the same way with the mother, couldn't teach her child how to be a mother in a home. And so in a sneaky way, they introduced that alcohol to us, and they made us dependent on them for the food and a way to live. And at that time, they took our children, our grandmothers and our grandfathers, they took our children and they put them into that boarding school. And then they got beat for speaking their language, and they were told that they were a bad person. And then sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. So at that time, the father, he couldn't be a father, so he was drinking. And the mother was following him. And then violence in the home, domestic abuse, because the father was, he was mad, he was angry, he couldn't provide for his family. And so we had all that going on. And then when the children came back to the home, if they came back to the home, there was that whirlwind. Alcohol abuse, violence. And then our grandmothers and grandmas, they brought that sexual abuse back. And they watched. They picked up that bottle. So that's what we're fighting against right there. How do we bring that back into the home? It's through the fathers and the mothers. We have to lay that foundation. We have to be that example for our people. That example that we were meant to be. And I know this because I'm doing this as we speak. I went to prison and they asked me to carry the pipe. And I dreamt of this, so I knew it was coming. And that goes back to our spirituality, to our ancestors. And they're always there watching us. Creator. We have that as Native people. We have that spirituality as Native people. And they communicate to us through dreams, through visions. And so I'm supposed to be here right now, talking to you the way that I believe. But I don't like to get up and talk because I'm real young and I'm learning. But I know I can help on this subject, because I've changed my life around through our culture and through our way of life and through our spirituality, through our ancestors, through the earth, through the stone nation, through the water nation, through the fire nation, the thunder beings, through the eagle nation you was talking about. All them things involves in that, and that's what our people are searching for. And we as fathers, we have to teach that again to our children. As men, it falls upon us as men, as Native men. And so I began doing this and moving little at a time. And after I got out of prison, and then I went up on a hill, and my grandfather, Leonard Crow Dog, he put me on a hill, and things start changing for me. And he started interpreting for me, and my brothers when they're not around. And everything that they talked about came to pass, came to be, because our ancestors were pushing me in a direction to help our people. And it's scary, because you're like, I'm sitting in a room with all you people, and you're all educated, and you all went to school. So I have that fear, but I won't let that fear cap me off, because I'm being educated in our way of life through our pipe. And I'm learning so much what this man over here is talking about, how we integrated into the healing of our people, into the healing of our nation, our way of life. And it's to open our mind and to have a beautiful heart and to understand, because spirituality is universal. Doesn't matter which tribe you come from, or if you're black, or if you're white. It doesn't matter, because we all come from the Creator. And if we have that heart in us, and that purity in us, and that want, and that compassion for our people, it will happen. That veil will begin to lift. And a lot of you may probably already know that. So I'm telling you something that you already know. But I want to express it. Because when this happens, we start to live in harmony with nature, and we respect everyone, like you was talking. And then we coincide with the spirit nation, and we make a friendship with them, and they help us. And when they help us, and then that's when we get some of our medicine, and that's how they heal. And then they tell them herbs, but it's mostly through faith that Creator wants to see how you can heal people. And through that, you can get different altars. But I've seen people do it with just blind faith, love and compassion for the people, and believing that. So that's what I'm learning, is just through your belief and through your heart, you can help heal people. And if they want it bad enough, in involving our way of life. And they told me to build, I had a little bitty sweat lodge. And so I came down from the hill and we had it interpreted. So the Eagle Nation came and they told me, they said, you're going to build your sweat lodge bigger because you're going to have more people coming. There's more people that want to come. And so we did. So we tore down the other one, we burned it, we made our sweat lodge bigger. And sure enough, you know, I work with the DDU, I work with our halfway house people, and then for the people on the streets, and people that just come in that wouldn't even want to know about our way of life, you know. Just being that prime example of turning your life around, our people are attracted to that. And our people are attracted to our spirits. Like there's a few people here that right away I wanted to go shake your hand, you know, just by you standing up there talking, you know. And that's your spirit. Just tell us that's your spirit because it's burning real bright in the spiritual realm. We all have a spirit. We're all made of a spirit. And some spirits are stronger than the others because they go bright in the spiritual realm. And so our other spirits are attracted to that spirit, so we go over it. We want to learn from them. So in a spiritual realm like that, we have all these beautiful spirits in here. And so, like you said, our ancestors come over here. Some of us have spirit helpers. So they come over here. Maybe they guided us over here. You know?
Thank you.
And I'm finding out, like you say, that the young men, they want to stand up. And it's through our culture. And then I have a boss, Crystal. And then she does on the other side what you're talking about, like on a mental health side. And so with me coming in and helping her, and then she has that, and then we turn it into where we involve our culture to the healing of our people. Taking them out, cutting wood with them, helping our elders, even helping the next tribe too. But it's starting with them with that prayer for our people to heal. When you see them make that first prayer, that's that first effort. Because we could pray for them, we could talk to God for them, we could talk to creation for them. But not until they make that first effort and put in that prayer and wanting to change, that's where it lies at, to use our way of life.
Thank you, sir.
And so it can be done. I'm an example of that. I'm a product of the reservation, turning my whole family around. Went into my companion, and it went into my children. My children, they stop smoking, and they start setting goals. And it's really beautiful. So it can be done, and thank you.
Thank you.